Hello, everyone. Do you all hear me well? Yes? Fine? Oh, perfect. Thank you. You're so numerous to be here. Thank you very much. I'm glad. It's the first time since a year and a half now that I'm able to meet with consumers, future travelers. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much. So now we're heading to Memphis and Mississippi. I don't know who has already followed some presentation, but we're going now deep south, so not to the west or the east. We're going deep south in the United States. So in Memphis, that is in the Tennessee, and the state of Mississippi. So I'll be including Memphis with Mississippi, because in the way of life, Memphis, which is in Tennessee, is very much closer to Mississippi than from, for instance, Nashville in the Tennessee. The Tennessee is very white American, and Mississippi is more South and Black American. So that's why it's always included with Mississippi. And also, as you can see on the map, Memphis is right at the border with Mississippi. It's a 30-minute drive. And most people who do work in Memphis often live in Mississippi. So Memphis should have been in the state of Mississippi, in fact. So we have 6 hours of time difference. In the US, it changes almost with every state. And just to start with the best time to travel, I would say in the shoulder season. I used to say all year round, but now we're having snow in winter, so everything's changed. So I would say my favorite time would be fall and spring. So let's say mid-September, October, November, then it starts to be a bit freezing, and now we have snow. And then back again, let's say in mid-April until early June, weather is fine, cotton fields are nice to see, and it's not too warm. And most of the time, travelers are going down to Louisiana, and then it's a hurricane season, so I would rather stay safe from that period of time. You have many ways to discover the region. Either you want to focus on Memphis and Mississippi, and thus you just have to travel via Atlanta, New York, Washington. There is always one stop to come to see us. Or you can just land in Chicago and do the Blues Highway, the Highway 61, that goes from Chicago down to New Orleans. Or maybe you can do a loop from Atlanta. If you have something like 2 weeks, it would be fine. So you have many ways to discover the region, depending on how much time you have to give. If you have only a week, it's still enough to visit Memphis and Mississippi. If you have more, you can have time to explore the whole area. So you can see on the map there is a green line. It's the Natchez Trace Parkway. It's a road that not everyone knows about. It's a non-commercial road, meaning that trucks are not allowed. It's a very, very nice way to take if you are driving a moto, for instance, or even driving. It's all green, no big trucks. It's a very nice way to discover the US instead of those big highways with 4 lanes. So my recommendation would be to start first with Tupelo. So it's on the Natchez Trace. So if you're coming from Nashville, for instance, you can take the Natchez Trace up down to Tupelo. And Tupelo, this is where some of you know because I've met them right downstairs. But Tupelo, do you know what it is? The birthplace of Elvis. So very, very important in the US culture. This is the house where Elvis is born. It has been made by his father and his uncle, and it sits right at the place where Elvis used to live. It hasn't been moved. The museum has been built here, and it's a very, very nice town. Tupelo is all about Elvis. You've got Elvis statues everywhere. You've got concerts, of course, of Elvis's siblings during night. It's a very, very nice town. And you have my favorite place, Tupelo Hardware. Not everyone knows about it. That's why I'm a lot communicating on it. So the hardware store is where Gladys, Elvis' mother, bought him his first guitar. So that's where the legend starts. Everything started here at the hardware store. And when Elvis became a huge star, the Tupelo Hardware did not change anything in the store. So it's like back to the 40s. It's a real trip on its own to go to Tupelo. So I would really recommend to go to Tupelo first. As everyone going to Memphis is going to Graceland, I think Tupelo is a good stop before to understand how Elvis, grew up and the way he became and the life he has chosen. It's very important for that kind of visit before heading to Graceland. That is the first stop when you arrive in Memphis. From Tupelo, you go through Graceland. So the house he bought when he was successful. It's still the house where the Elvis Presley family lives. So you can visit it. It's with an iPad, very interactive. You can visit everything beside the first floor where the family still lives when they are in town. So very interactive, as I said. You have explanation on every room. You can visit his office, the gardens, and of course it ends up at the memorial where Elvis and his family are buried. So it's a very moving moment when you visit Graceland. So the house is on one side of the Elvis Graceland complex. Elvis Presley Graceland complex, and at the other side you have the Wall Museum. So if I have to explain it, it's a huge complex with one building focusing on one theme of Elvis' life, and it's massive. We know how much Elvis was a huge star, but when you arrive there, you really, understand it with your eyes. You've got all his golden records. In another building, you have got all his outfits. All these cars, do I have the cars? Yes. All the movies he played in, it's very impressive. If you're not an Elvis fan, you can easily spend half a day there with the house, between the house and the complex. And if you're a fan, you can spend the whole day. There is restoration options for lunch, for instance, because you get into it and you don't leave the complex until the end of the day. You also visit two planes. Elvis had two private charter planes, and you get to visit them, enter, you can sit down. Really, it's a real experience on its own where you can spend a full day learning more about Elvis's life. It's very impressive. And then you finally arrive in Memphis. Memphis is a very green city, as you can see on the picture. I would really recommend choosing an hotel that is located in the center, because in choosing that option, you can do everything by walking. We have bicycle to rent, bicycle share, sorry, looking for my words in English. Bicycle shares and scooter shares as well. So you can do everything without taking your car. Everything is easily reachable. And mostly in Memphis, we don't have chains, like huge fashion chains or restaurant chains. Everything is independent, locally owned. So it makes the city very different feel when you walk in the city and you don't have those big chains that you would expect to find in a capital city. So as you can see, everything is green. Memphis has been built right close to the Mississippi River. And it makes it very convenient and nice to walk in. Most of the time when we're traveling to the US, we have very little time, spending a minimum night in each city to ensure we see everything. But really in Memphis, dedicate time to just walk around the city, enjoy the cities. It's a very nice and relaxing walk. So what to do during your nights? Because Memphis is all about nights. It's Beale Street. Beale Street is the famous street of Memphis, where you've got all the bars, all the clubs. Memphis is all about the music. We said that Memphis is the home of blues, soul, and rock and roll. And you can find all that kind of music right down Beale Street. Where every night, locals and not locals are listening to music in the bars and the pubs. There is also in Beale Street the famous B.B. King Blues Club. That is right there, where you have really big stars playing mostly every night. And what during your day? During your day, of course, you get Sun Studio, so the studio where Elvis recorded. It's still an active studio. Some huge rock and music band recorded recently in the studio, and the visits are made by real staff of the studio, so real professionals that are passionate by what they do, and they have lots of stories to share about Elvis and not around Elvis, around the studio. It's a very, very nice visit. It's a group visit because you have to be with the guide to understand the whole story about Sun Studio, but it's very well done. If you know the US, they know how to tell a story. They know how to get you involved in the story. So Sun Studio is a very good example of that. So at that time, where Sun Studio was created, it used to record only the white Americans, and at the other side of the city, in Memphis, you have Stax. So Stax Studio, the label Stax, it's less known that Sun records, but Stax used to record Otis Redding, for instance, Carla Thomas, or Isaac Hayes of Shaft. It's a very, very big label. If you look for internet, you'll see, I'm sure you know lots of artists that have been recorded at Stax. As I said, the museum is also very interactive. You get a dance floor in the museum where you can record yourself while dancing. It's a very, very nice museum to go to. For Sun mostly, you better book your tickets in advance. It's quite crowded at Graceland. It's always better to book your tickets in advance. Stax a bit less. You can be a last-minute decision if you have some spare time. So we're in the city of blues, soul, rock and roll, and everything is linked and goes with the civil rights, of course, the fight for the civil rights. And Martin Luther King, he has been assassinated right in Memphis at the Lorraine Motel. And so the hotel has been completely revamped and organized, and they have created the museum within the Lorraine Motel. So it's all about the civil rights, focusing on Martin Luther King's life. Very, very moving. That's a word I'll be using a lot, talking about Memphis and Mississippi. We're not in the West or in the city capital of the East. It's the South of the United States, the Deep South, as we call it, is all about the history of the US with the big H. I mean, we're going deep where everything started. And that museum really speak about that and explain all the racial issues at the time of Martin Luther King in the region. You can easily spend half a day as well in that museum. So Memphis, minimum 3 nights, I would say, because you see, with the sun, stags just walking around, enjoying the Mississippi River, enjoying Beale Street, you can easily spend 3 nights. Shorter than 3 nights would be a bit short. And then after Memphis, I would recommend to go down with the Highway 61 up to Natchez. The Highway 61 is the blues highway, so it goes from Chicago to New Orleans. And it's a very nice road to get to understand all the region. Just to go down. So we're going to Memphis, to Clarksdale. As you can see on the screen on the left. The region is called the Delta of the Mississippi. This is where we have all the cotton fields. So all what you would have in mind with the Mississippi River and all the cotton fields would be in that region, from down to Memphis to Clarksdale, Cleveland, Greenville. This is really the Delta of the Mississippi. Clarksdale, if there is some blues fan here, Clarksdale is the home of the blues. And we have the Ground Zero. It's the blues club of Morgan Freeman, the American actor. He lives in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and it's a blues club. And you have great nights in Clarksdale. That's a must stop on the way on the Highway 61. A bit further down, the Grammy Museum. So there are 2 in the US, one in Los Angeles and the second one in Cleveland, Mississippi. Because if you look at the list of all the Grammy winners, most of them are coming from Mississippi. They say, the Mississippians say there is something in the soul that are making them great artists. And it's a really nice stop on the way. You have the outfits of Justin Timberlake, Beyonce. It's a very nice stop on the way. And a bit further down, do you know who that man is? Someone knows? No one? Okay, his guitar's name Lucille, maybe it will help. No, it's B.B. King. B.B. King, the renowned international guitarist, is born in Indianola. There is his museum there. And even if you don't know about B.B. King, it's a very important museum because it explains all the Delta region. So B.B. King is buried in the museum. So but when he was younger, as you could guess to his age, he was picking cotton in the cotton fields. So he had a very, very tough youth in the Delta of Mississippi. And then life made him a wonderful, internationally renowned guitarist. And the museum tells that story. And the museum actually sits in the place where he used to put the cotton while he was sharecropper. So it's very moving. It explains, that the crazy life he had and how he handled all that. So we learn a lot of things, and it's very moving. And down out of the Delta region now, we're going down to Vicksburg. Vicksburg is where the Secession War happened. We have the war fields in Vicksburg, so I would recommend it stop only if you know what it's about. Some generation do, some generation don't. So a stop only if you know what it's all about. A long stop in the field, but a stop in the city for like a walk is always good because it's a very, very beautiful city that sits right close to the Mississippi River. So you have beautiful views on the river. So it's a nice stop on the way to the city. I would rather recommend that is Jackson. It's the city capital, Jackson, Mississippi, like in the Bruno Mars song, all about music in Memphis and Mississippi. We have the two Mississippi museums. So it's the Museum of Mississippi History and the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum. So you would say, again, a civil rights museum, but it's not at all the same as in Memphis and not the same as in Atlanta, for instance. This one focused really on the slavery, early stages, how Mississippi became Mississippi, and that thanks to Europeans, actually. So how Mississippi was built up to nowadays, and it goes through the segregation, for instance. They show classes, how the children were segregated, how the KKK was organized in Mississippi, with pictures of the KKK in Jackson. It's very well documented, lots of interviews, print materials, pictures. It helps really understand, as I said at the beginning, the history of the United States. For me, the region really is all about understanding what happened in the United States and what it is today. It's different from, we have beautiful landscapes, we have the cotton fields and the beautiful Mississippi River, but it's also about understanding what the US is all about. And this museum really helps. You can really easily spend half a day in that museum in Jackson. So I would recommend one night in Jackson, and then on the way down south, stop on the way in Vicksburg, for instance. But I would really add Jackson to my itinerary in the Deep South. And then we're heading down to Natchez. Natchez is often believed to belong to Louisiana, but it is in Mississippi. So Natchez hasn't been touched by any war, and God knows in the region we had lots of battlefields, and we still get to see all the beautiful, what we call antebellum houses, so houses prior to war. Like Longwood, it's the largest octagonal home of the United States, so it's dated 1860, which, you know, for the US, it's quite old. For us Europeans, not really, but for the US, it's really very, very old building. Natchez is a very nice city with beautiful views on the Mississippi. It's right down the river. You have bicycle to rent, to stroll around Natchez. There is also a double-decker bus, so you can just sit and have a view on the houses. And also, 2 times a year, there is a special moment called the pilgrimage. The pilgrimage, I have to tell you first, all those houses belongs to private owners. You and I, private owners in Natchez. And 2 times a year, during the pilgrimage, they open the doors of the house. And you can actually visit, you can get into Longwood, for instance, and get to see the houses from the inside. And so this is Natchez. It is a view on the river, beautiful sunset from Natchez. It's really, for me, a must-stop on an itinerary in Mississippi, just for one night. Just sit here, relax, sip a glass of wine in front of the Mississippi River. Beautiful sunset there. So you see, from Memphis to Natchez, it's a 5-hour drive. So quite short compared to what we're used to in the US when we're doing the Western parks, for instance. And so I would recommend like 3 nights in Memphis, then maybe 1 night in Cleveland, 1 night in Jackson, 1 night in Natchez. So it's in a very short amount of time, you get to you get to see a lot in terms of landscapes, in terms of learning more about the South, the blues, and the rock and roll. So depending on whether you have a week or 2 weeks, you can expand all around that. There is also a region that is not often talked about, that is a region down here, the Gulf Coast. Also, most of the time it's linked with New Orleans, but we have pristine beaches. We have islands in the Mexico Gulf where you can stroll a day, just relax on the beach for, if you had driven from Memphis to Natchez and then you want to relax for a few days, this is the possibility on the Gulf Coast. Also, if you're looping from Atlanta, going down to Memphis, Natchez, you can drive back through the Gulf Coast, enjoy the pristine beaches and the islands. So this is it for Memphis and Mississippi. Do you have any question I could answer, maybe? Everything's crystal clear? Everything clear? Wonderful. Okay. I think I've been really quick on my presentation. Yes, I've been 15 minutes. I've been really quick. This was it. Of course, yes, I'm on the first floor. I have brochures in French and English, and also maps. So if you want to go into further details, we can still discuss that on the first floor. I sent also by mail brochures and maps and everything. So you can just pick up my contacts, send me an email whenever you need, whenever you're ready to think about your next trip. I'll be here to answer any of your questions. Thank you very much.